If CBS is any indication, Drake over Missouri going to be a popular upset pick this week. I'll explain why I'm not buying it. Right now, I'm locked on Mizzou.
You are Locked On Mizzou, your daily podcast on the Missouri Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, all you true sons and daughters, I'm John Miller, your Mizzou mafioso and the central scrutinizer of Missouri Tigers football and basketball. Thanks to all of you who joined me live on YouTube yesterday for the live reaction to Missouri's matchup with Drake in Wichita. By the way, that game tipping off at 6:35 p.m. on Thursday on True TV. By the way, got a lot of things to say about Bennett Stirtz. I watched Drake quite a bit this morning. Came away incredibly impressed by that young man. But you know what? I'll tell you this right off the top. I am not being dismissive of Drake whatsoever. I do think that CBS, frankly, was being dismissive of Missouri yesterday. For the fact that every single person on their panel picked Drake to win that game, my goodness, the Tigers are, on paper, just simply a better team than Drake. That doesn't mean that you can dismiss Drake. That doesn't mean that Drake can't win this basketball game. But I just thought, based on what Missouri has done this season, well, the number one scoring defense, that's really going a long ways in a lot of people's opinions. But you know what? Let's talk about Drake here for just a little bit. Bennett Stirtz, as I started watching the Arch Madness Championship there, it was put out there by the announcers, hey, he's probably their best player. And I thought, well, we'll just see about that. And I got to say, I came away really impressed by Stirtz to the point where I realized, wait a second, this young man is from Liberty, Missouri. I just spent my entire weekend at Liberty Middle School watching a dance competition. So an odd coincidence there. By the way, my daughter Ava did outstanding in her first thing, got second place, and only my wife and sister-in-law thought she got screwed over, of course. But I thought she did fantastically. But I digress. The point here, Bennett Stirtz, a guy from Liberty, Missouri, played his first 2 seasons at Northwest Missouri State, by the way, a Division II school. So the junior, this is his first season of Division I basketball. But boy, you wouldn't know it just by watching him play. I'll tell you that. He can absolutely pass and shoot, handle it, the whole thing. He's got decent size for a guard, too, at 6'4". And here's an easy prediction. He's going to play all 40 minutes against Missouri on Thursday. That's a real easy prediction. I'll go a little bit more bold, though, even. I think Drake, the Bulldogs, might have 2 other guys who play 40 minutes as well in Mitch Mescari and Daniel Abreu. So part of the method to Coach Ben Collins' madness here, of course, by playing the slowest pace in college basketball, is that they have 2 guys who play the most minutes in college basketball. This is not an exaggeration or hyperbole. Bennett Stirtz is number 1. Either Mitch Mescari or Daniel Abreu is number 2. Let me check that real quick. I know one of these young men is number 2. Might as well actually get this correct. Yes, it's Mitch Mescari, who is literally number 2 in terms of percentage played minutes for his team on the season. So Ben McCollum is basically going to roll his guys out there and try to dare you to beat him. And considering Bennett Stirtz is going to run most of that offense, run most of the show, make largely most of the decisions for the Bulldogs, it's really hard to poke any holes in his offensive game. It really is. Averaging 19 points, 6 assists, 4 boards, more than 2 steals a game as well. Again, playing nearly 40 minutes a ball game, by the way, 39.3 to be exact. Again, hard to pick it apart. He's scoring well at the rim. He's scoring well in pick and rolls. I mean, this guy has gone from a Division II player to a guy at Drake, a 1-year player at Drake. To me, this guy is a bona fide NBA prospect now, believe it or not. He really might be the best player on the court in this basketball game, and that is a scary proposition if you're Missouri. Also, they start 3 total graduates, 2 juniors, so like the Missouri Tigers, plenty of experience. Defensively, by the way, this number 1 scoring defense, hey, if you adjust for pace and opponent, well, they're not quite that good. They're something like in the 40s, according to KenPom, for example. But one thing that stands out, I should say, for the Bulldogs, they steal the ball at an incredibly high rate. In fact, number 1 in the country. They have the highest steal percentage in the country. Again, that's pace neutral there, by the way. But they don't block shots. And that's the thing where now we start to see where I think Missouri really does have an advantage. Because Drake, their 5 starters, none of them are taller than Mark Mitchell or Trent Pierce, for example, or even Aiden Shaw for that matter. So Drake truly has no rim protection. So if you're Missouri, attack the paint, attack the rim. We know Missouri loves to shoot 3-pointers and does it quite well, but make the Bulldogs collapse that defense and look for kickouts on those threes. There's no reason for early in the ball game for Caleb Grill or Jacob Cruz or anybody else to be putting up semi-contested 3-pointers early in the shot clock. I really think Missouri should and can do better than that on Thursday. And because of how this game, I think, is going to play out, I think the first half of the game to even maybe the first 30 minutes or so, broadly speaking, I think it's going to be really important for Missouri. Because I think they can possibly, again, emphasis on possibly, run away with this one at a certain point. I just think the Tigers have too much size, too much athleticism, and too much depth as well. And again, why the first 2/3 of this game I think is really important for Missouri to take control by about the 10-minute mark and say the second half, because I think if this is a tight game, if this comes down to late game execution, I really hate to say this, but I would put my money on Drake because Bennett Stirtz really is that good. Not only might he be the best player on the floor, but Missouri has had its moments of lacking in execution in late game situations as well. So if I'm going to be a fair analyst here and not just the Mizzou cheerleader, I think I would have to favor Drake in that particular situation. So if I'm Missouri, I'm very much trying to make sure that I get a lead in this ball game. I mean, that's an obvious statement. I'm just saying I think it'll be really important for Missouri to not let this be a nip and tuck kind of affair in the last few minutes of the ball game. The good news is, again, while what I've laid out here is a little bit worrisome, again, the other team has the best player, I still come back to the Missouri Valley Conference versus the SEC. The Tigers are so much more battle-tested than the Bulldogs. It's really not even close when you look at these teams' schedule. Yes, Drake beat Vanderbilt. Nice win, really. Let's see you play those types of games, and by the way, games that are much harder than Vanderbilt. Let's see you do that twice a week for 2.5 months. I just think that's going to go into Missouri's favor at a certain point. And at this point, I'm going to assume Mark Mitchell will be good to go for Missouri on Thursday. And I sure hope so, because I think Mitchell's going to be a huge factor in this ball game coming up. And I'll tell you why in just a little bit. But you know what? Speaking of factors, let's talk about Factor meals. Eating healthy doesn't have to be complicated. With Factor, you get chef-made, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes. Factor meals arrive fresh, never frozen, with tons of options. We're talking protein plus and keto. That's what I'm talking about right there. That's right in my wheelhouse. The Korean beef bowl, by the way, I think is particularly good. But if, hey, you're on the go, that type of person, smoothies, snacks, breakfast, eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code FACTORPODCAST to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FACTORPODCAST at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. And get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. That's Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. With so many parts, an easy-to-use website delivered to you fast from coast to coast. If you need help, Supply House is always here with expert support and industry-leading service. You'll always talk to an actual person. And for trade pros looking for an edge, their free Trade Master program is exactly what you're looking for. Dedicated phone line, free shipping, discounts on every order. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. So Drake appears to have some good players on the inside. At forward, I wouldn't even say that Drake really starts a center. They start two forwards, I would say, and play three, basically, between the aforementioned Daniel Abreu, who might well play the entire game, but also Tavion Banks and Cam Manu as well. Neither guy, all of them are 6'6" to 6'8". And while, again, they're good players, they just don't seem like they're the type of player that Mark Mitchell would tend to struggle against. You would see Mitchell have his troubles against a team like Tennessee that had a lot of length, a lot of just tall, athletic defenders to throw at you, and a very good team defense is Tennessee too. And again, obviously Drake has good defensive principles. They play good team basketball as well. Those just don't seem like the type of players that Mark Mitchell is going to struggle against. Once again, at 6'9", Mitchell listed as taller than anyone who plays for Drake. Same thing with Trent Pierce. Heck, same thing obviously with Aiden Shaw. Well, I should say obviously Josh Gray, but even Aiden Shaw is listed at 6'9", taller than anybody in Drake's actual rotation. So the point here in bringing this up is that, yes, while I think Bennett Stirtz, their continuity, just that they're going to slow it down and probably get the most they can out of every possession. A scary proposition, but what would be a scary proposition if I'm Ben McCollum, if I'm Drake? I'm worried that Missouri just has too many options for me, and they're probably going to figure out something that works for them against me, because sometimes Missouri, when they need a little bit more beef inside, a little bit more defense inside, a little bit more rebounding defensively, usually they turn to Josh Gray. We know that Josh Gray is a trade-off. As great of a defensive player he typically is not helping your offense. But against Drake, I'm just not sure that Missouri is going to really need Josh Gray that much. But again, the deal is, if you're Dennis Gates, you have the luxury of figuring out exactly what you need. Hopefully in the first 5-10 minutes of this ball game, you try a bigger lineup. You try a smaller lineup. I would start with whatever I think is going to work best. I would probably start with a smaller lineup with Gray on the bench. That would be my first instinct. But either way, I would get Gray into the game within the first 8 to 10 minutes or so and see what that looks like as well. Because I think if you're Dennis Gates, it's not so much about the results. Obviously, figure out what type of shots you're getting, what types of shots you're giving up. And I think if Missouri can just find the right combination of guys that works early in the game, I think it's going to be trouble for Drake. I really do. Again, not to be dismissive. I keep bringing this up. I'm not being dismissive of Drake at all, to the point where I think they might have the best player on the floor. The problem is for them, I think Missouri has the best team on the floor. I have to say the reactions from Missouri fans after this announcement have been absolutely all over the place. Some fans think this was a terrible draw. Oh my God, Drake is 30-3, and this could, Steve, one of my commenters, says, let's be ready. We do not want another Norfolk State type of upset. Good Lord, people can be negative on the internet. Folks, if Missouri loses this game, it will not be a Norfolk State type of upset. As we sit here, Missouri a 6.5-point favorite over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Ken Palm has Missouri 71-65 winners. Nobody is saying that Drake cannot win this basketball game. But then there are other fans who just assume maybe too much that having not seen Drake play at all, that, oh, well, they just have some white guys who can shoot threes or something like that. I've seen that thrown out there as well. Obviously, that's not exactly a deep level of analysis either. I'm obviously falling somewhere in between here. I'm sort of kind of leaning more toward what the numbers are saying, which is that Missouri has the superior team. But again, I'm telling you, that kid for Drake, Bennett Stirtz, dismiss him all you want. He's some kid from Division II or whatever. There are not a lot of holes to poke in his game from this past season. I'd be saying, boy, I'm looking forward to see him play if it were against anybody but Missouri. Now, if Stirtz isn't the best player on the court on Thursday, it might well be Caleb Grill. And if it is Caleb Grill, I'd say Missouri has a really good chance to advance to the second round. And speaking of Caleb, well, you had to be happy for the Wichita native, and actually even more happy, I would say, from one of my followers on Twitter, Lena Grill, his mother, and also his father as well. Caleb says it's exciting just because of the amount of miles that my mom and dad and my brothers have put in and the rest of my family members have put in. So to have a game close to them and where I got to travel to them, I think that's what I'm more excited about than anything. So good for the Grill family, and maybe even better for the Grill family travel budget. Those people have been all over the country following not only Caleb, but their other sons playing hoops as well. So congrats to the Grills on that and their pocketbooks, quite possibly. Now, of course, defensively, if you're Missouri, since I've spent such a huge chunk of this episode putting over what a good player I think Bennett Stirtz is, well, how about you double team him? How about that? Get the ball out of his hands. And if Drake wants to play slowly, how about some full court pressure, at least some token three-quarter pressure, that type of deal. Get Drake out of what they want to do. Don't let them dictate the game if you're Missouri. Again, if you have options, if you have the superior athleticism, you have the superior depth, make it into a faster game than Drake wants it to be, quite possibly. So I'm just fascinated by how many different options I think that Missouri has to possibly win this game. Obviously, it's going to be up to Dennis Gates and his staff to figure out what they think is the most effective path forward. And as you all, my new basketball buddy and recent guest of this program, Shane Matson, former high school coach at Marquette High School in St. Louis, he has a crucial observation for this Missouri team coming up, and I couldn't agree more with it, especially against Drake coming up on Thursday. So let's get to that here in just a minute. First, though, it's time for FanDuel, and it's time for March Madness, and they go together like cereal and milk. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks in bonus bets to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who is cutting down the nets. What do you think? Missouri, 6.5? I'm going to stay off of it. I think that's a pretty fair number at the moment. Not a ton of value there. I certainly think would bet on Missouri winning straight up. 6.5? Let's just stay away for now. Regardless, visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. And Coach Matson says 50-50 balls are going to be so crucial for us going forward. When you have 4 players, for example, around a lone opponent, and that opponent comes up with a loose ball, basketball karma beats you 98% of the time. I think that's a valid observation. I really do. And it's one that you would hope would be more valid against in a November 24th game against Vanderbilt, for example. Sure, you could understand human nature being what it is. These mid-major type of teams going up against an SEC type of team, maybe they would win some more of those 50-50 loose balls and just won it just a tiny bit more in those particular circumstances. But in these circumstances, in March Madness, for crying out loud, if Missouri does not have the same want to and desire and hustle as Drake, if they don't have at least as much as Drake, well, that is a massive failure. It really is. So to Matson's point, you better be ready to play. I don't care who it's against. Again, some Missouri fans are all over the map here. They either think Drake is this great opponent who is probably going to take down Missouri, or they think they're basically Norfolk State. Obviously, I'm somewhere in the middle of that. The point is, no matter what you think, you cannot assume anything in this tournament, especially as a 6 seed. It's not as though we're a 1 playing a 16. And as we've seen a couple times over the last 6 or 7 tournaments, heck, even those teams can lose. A lot of 2 seeds have been upset in the first round as of late. Auburn lost to Yale last season, famously. So if you're Missouri, you better take the old coach's advice. 50-50 balls are as important as anything on this, whether it's how you defend Stirtz, how you attack offensively, which lineups are going to be most effective for the Tigers. Simply put, if you're Missouri, you better want it as bad as Drake, or else there's really no excuse for anything else. Not in March Madness.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the bracket breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
And finally, I am just going to end on a slightly personal note here and ask a question. Is dance a sport? Well, I'm not really sure. I'm kind of on the fence on whether dance is actually a sport or not. It's pretty close to gymnastics when you think about it in a lot of ways, but regardless, I think the point is dance, you get the same thing out of it. Competitive dance. I just saw my daughter's first dance competition this past weekend. And by the way, I've been around these competitions for years now. But just to experience it as an actual dance parent, it sure felt a heck of a lot like being a sports parent. You were nervous for your kid. You were thrilled to see him out there, all that kind of good stuff. And to see her succeed and not only get on stage and nail the performance more or less, but also just, overcome her fears and all this kind of stuff. I'm telling you, for a 5-year-old, that's really cool stuff. This is just going to build her confidence so much. And just, kids, the point is the kids get so much out of competition, whether it's dance, whether it's football, whether it's basketball. My buddy Jake, his son, who plays a quarterback basketball player, well, he was there supporting his sister who's on the team. He kind of loves it, even though we make fun of him a little. We kind of rib him a little. We're like, come on, you're going to get out there next year, that kind of deal. Well, he absolutely loves the competition part of it and supporting his sister. It's a beautiful thing to see, and I'll just say, I can't wait to go to the next one. Whether it's a sport or not, I think these young ladies and the few young men are out there too, I think they get the same thing out of it as I got out of my basketball career in my younger days, for example. So good times in Liberty, Missouri. Hopefully the young man from Liberty, Missouri will be a little easy on the Tigers on Thursday. Not expecting it. I'm sure he'll be trying to ball out and destroy another Division I team that did not recruit him. But regardless, until next time, I am John Miller, and thanks for listening to Locked On Mizzou.